What is up guys, welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and today we're going to be taking all this epic hardware around me and turning it into one insane sort of white and black themed build featuring Corsair's latest 680X. So without any further ado, let's jump into it. Bookmark is an easy free website builder with a host of features, including e-commerce for making an online store. The coolest bit, it uses artificial intelligence, answers 7 simple questions, and it creates the website in front of your eyes in less than 2 minutes for you to easily tweak and perfect. It's super cool, and you can create your fully responsive site today at bookmark.com, linked in the description below. Now I'm going to be mixing the format up a little bit in today's video, so the benchmarks will come later on, but first let's put this thing together and go over the parts that I selected and why, and start as always with the heart of any build, which is of course the CPU. Now in this build you've definitely got a few options when it comes to the processor. I personally opted for the latest i9 9900K from Intel. This is a fantastic content creation CPU and is going to work really well with 8 cores and 16 threads, with a base clock speed of 3.6 GHz, not that impressive, and a boost of 5 GHz, which is very impressive. Not only does that make it fantastic for your multi-threaded applications that require lots of cores, but also gaming is going to work well on this chip, which is what I opted for. If you want to save a bit of money, an i5 or an i7 will do you just well from a gaming perspective. Next up is actually the motherboard, and this is the component that we sort of are going to build the system around. This is the Asus Prime Z390A. Now not only is the Z390 chipset the latest and greatest that Intel have got to offer, it supports overclocking and does so with some quite good margins. Now Asus have done a really great job on the styling of this board, as well as that overclocking I mentioned. You've got 4 RAM DIMM slots, support for SLI or Crossfire, you've got USB 3.1 Type-C on the rear panel as well, alongside dual M.2 slots for plenty of expandability. I really like the design of this motherboard, and you also get a pretty decent array of included accessories, such as a couple of SATA cables. You get a rear I/O shield. This one's got a bit of padding on, which shows it's a bit more premium, alongside a front panel tool. This is helpful, and I'll show more on that later. Alongside some other bits and bobs, an SLI bridge, a driver's CD. Seriously, who's got, anyway, just get them on the internet, download them from like Asus's website, you'll get the latest versions, alongside a manual and this voucher for some cable mod cables. So if anyone's interested, this is yours. Now in terms of the accessories, these can all go back in the box, but I'm going to save this rear I/O shield for a little bit later, as it's a useful thing to have out. Now this CPU and motherboard combo are going to work really well, especially considering that high-end i9 chip has got a bit more expandability in the way of PCIe lanes and whatever else have you. It's just a really nice combination, and also doesn't break the bank. The CPU's a bit expensive, but the motherboard hits some really nice price to performance ratios. Now the next component in this build is another key source of inspiration for building this PC actually. This is 32GB of Corsair's brand spanking new Dominator Platinum RGB. Now you're probably thinking, James, this memory doesn't look very white to me. Well, it isn't, but it is special in a few other ways. Primarily that it boasts Corsair's brand new Capellix RGB technology. Rather than having 5 or 6 LEDs per DIMM that you can assign some presets to, this has 12 individually programmable LEDs per memory stick, and that is just insane. Oh, that's heavy. Now with the CPU and the memory and the motherboard all covered, it brings us on nicely to the CPU. It's quite heavy. The CPU cooler I've selected for this build, and this is where the white theme becomes super duper obvious. Corsair's latest and greatest AIO cooler is their H100i Platinum SE edition. Now this is a basically all white version of their original H100i Platinum, which conveniently I've done a full video on, and you can find that in the card section here. Oh, it looks properly good. Now, first up in this packaging, you've got their white edition of their light loop RGB fans. Rather than just having an addressable RGB ring in the center or on the edge, it's actually got 2, which means you can have some really cool effects and makes things a little bit more dynamic. I believe Corsair were like the original people to do this as well, and a lot of people have since copied. Now, everything comes up really nicely packaged. You know it's going to arrive in one piece. I don't think the plastic bags are all that necessary, but I mean, everyone does it, so there must be a reason for it. Oh, look at that. Yes. Wow, so here it is in person. I mean, I don't know if you can sort of gather my reaction through the camera, but it looks so good. And you've got like this glossy white finish with the shiny metallic Corsair logo, and they've actually painted the fins and the enclosure of the radiator. They haven't just left this middle section completely black, which I really appreciate. I mean, you get a bit of black on the water block, but I think that's a bit inevitable. I don't think you can fully get away from that, so it's best to kind of embrace it. But oh, it looks so good. Now, we don't actually need the radiator till a little bit later. We're just going to actually install the mounting hardware and the backplate and all the other stuff. Now then, before we move this sort of completed motherboard sort of array into the case, if you will, there is one or two more components we want to look at. First off is storage. Now, for the primary boot drive of this system, I've got a 500GB ADATA SX 8200 Pro, NVMe speeds of like up to 3 gigabytes a second or just something ridiculous, and it's going to make the system super quick out the blocks and plug straight into your motherboard's M.2 connector. Secondly, I've also got this Intel Optane SSD 900p, another 500GB SSD that is instead a PCIe drive. One of the fastest SSDs on the market. I think it's only beaten out by like the 930 or 960p, but I'll link that in the description down below, as with all the parts for different regions and retailers. This drive works particularly well for super low latency access. Something like Premiere Pro Scratch Disk work amazing on this. It's a bit of a specialised use, but if you want the fastest of the fastest, this is the way to go. Now then, it's time to move this actually quite heavy completed oh, found a screw. Ow, ow, ah, oh, bloody cut me. Time to move this completed motherboard array into the case, which is going to be a little bit interesting. The plant is getting relegated for starters. Oh my god, this is so heavy. Oh my god. Oh my god. Very heavy. Now, this piece of kit here is Corsair's brand new 680X, and as you can see, it's quite large. This builds on the success of their 280X, which was a micro ATX chassis, and the really unique thing about it is that it's like compartmentalised, so it's made up of two sections, which means your power supply, your drives, all that other annoying, very, let's put it this way, ugly stuff gets stored in the back where you can't see it, and your graphics card, motherboard, fans, radiators all go in the front, so you can have glam at the front and sort of the utilitarian side at the rear, if you will. Now, this case doesn't really compete with the 280X, it's definitely for a slightly sort of more expensive build segment. I mean, this case isn't cheap, but when you factor in the price of those front fans alone, suddenly it becomes a little bit less expensive, shall we say. Now, I did save one thing for the camera, and that is, of course, the big peel. What a fail. Now, the more I actually sort of tinker about with this case, the more sort of cool quirks and features that I find. I feel like Doug DeMuro with that statement. Quirks and features? The SSD base, for example, is sort of modular. You can sort of stack them on top of each other. If you don't need them, you can take them out, put them in. And there is just an obscene amount of room for mounting storage, especially in a chassis of 2019, where normally there's just about enough room for a hard drive and maybe one or two 2.5-inch SSDs. Now, one thing I am also going to do at this stage is take out this rear non-RGB fan. It's just not going to work for me when the build is all done. Now, at this point in the video, I've got an interesting question for you all. How many screws do you actually put in your motherboard? Let me know in the cards poll here, because normally I'd literally just shove like 3 or 4 in, it'll do, but because this is going on the internet, I know someone might get a bit upset if I don't do them all. Now, I also picked up a couple of additional fans for this system, which is going to go along nicely with our radiator. Not only keep things more cool, but also add just a little bit more RGB spice into our life, shall we say. graphics card in this build, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Now I've done loads of coverage of the RTX cards, I've done a full review of the Founders RTX 2060, as well as done builds with the 2070, 2080 and 2080 Ti. Now unfortunately I haven't got one of the 2080 or 2080 Ti cards in at the moment. I borrow them out from like MSI and Asus for projects, so this will have to do. This is the Zotac Amp Extreme GTX 1080 Ti, which is more than powerful enough. Doesn't boast ray tracing support, but if I'm being honest, I don't play a great deal of Battlefield 5 at the moment anyway, so it is no biggie for me. This, I know it looks unorthodox, but it works. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go, Sonny good. Now you may already have noticed that I've been putting a couple of these in as we go, but I've also got some really nice sleeved cables from Corsair. Another new product in their sort of accessories range. These come with their own cable combs, and you can actually buy cable combs as well. The pre-existing cable kits from Corsair's website, they look really good and just help to set off the build super nicely. These are complemented with the front panel extension kit, which gives me white front panel cable extensions to make sure there's no colour clashes going on in this build. Although I've just realised I probably should have put those in before the graphics card, so I might need to backtrack very slightly. Yeah.
It took one look and now you stare at me the same.
Now with basically all the core components in, there is just one more thing to add, and that's the power supply. This is Corsair's RM850X. There isn't too much to say about it other than that it's a fully modular power supply with an 80+ gold certification, so you only plug in the cables you need and it's super efficient. Oh, and did I mention it's also white, so it's going to fit with the build colour scheme perfectly. And that now, with a bit more cable management, a snazzy RGB strip and a bit of tender loving care, it's going to look phenomenal. So before we jump into some live benchmarks, roll the montage. Now that the PC is built in all its glory and looks phenomenal with that RGB lighting, I thought let's hook it up and play a few games. First off is Forza's brand new Horizon 4. Jumping into the settings, we're going to be gaming at 4K, trying to hit well over 60 frames per second consistently, with a boatload of ultra settings all the way through that advanced tab. I've also got a frame rate counter going on so you can keep track of just how good the game is looking. Now I haven't played much of Forza yet, and I've got to admit I'm loving it so far. Ooh. Now what makes this perhaps even more, keep your eyes on the road James, even more impressive is I'm actually recording this live with XSplit, so you can see exactly what's going on, meaning 4K gaming with this build is also super duper possible. In terms of peripherals, I've got Cooler Master's CK550, a really affordable budget mechanical keyboard, which I did a video on in the card section here, as well as one of their brand new budget gaming mice on this massive RGB desk pad, which is really cool. We're going to protect the desk and also add a bit more of a comfort level for the arms, shall we say. Now, I mean, you can see here from the graphics on this game, my pretty diabolical skill aside, it just looks absolutely fantastic. I've of course got VSync enabled, which has given us frame rates of like 90 frames per second, which is really good, with some nice high GPU usage as well. The single threaded performance on that 9900K is really paying dividends, though you shouldn't see too much of a performance drop with the cheaper i7 9700K or i5 9600K. Oh, get out of the way, buddy. Get out of the way, get out of the way. Oh, this looks so sick. Look, I've played Forza Horizon 3, but not 4 to a great... Oh my god, look how good that looks. Wow, this game with ray tracing on an RTX card would be incredible, though I don't think it supports ray tracing, at least not at the minute. Meow. Video, and I'm playing this on a keyboard and mouse. Never play this game on a keyboard and mouse. Always a controller for racing games. I mean, what's your preference? Let me know in the poll in the card section here. Ooh, that's water, that's water, that's water. Ooh, God, get a bit of a snake on. Boom. Ooh. Ooh, do, 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 do. How good does that keyboard sound though? Like, oh my goodness me. Damn, that's good. Now, the next game here is one that I think should be on everyone's list. One of the best games ever, in my opinion. Of course, GTA 5. If you look at the graphic settings here, we're in 4K, kind of medium settings, if you will, with those advanced sliders up to about halfway. So it's going to give us a good happy medium between visual sort of clarity and visual effects and the frame rate. You can see here in excess of 80, even 90 frames per second at some points. Now, what's one thing everyone should do in GTA 5? Begins with Air Force and ends with base, so let's head there. Now we're going to need a bit of a run up, but I think this will do us quite nicely. Oh, it's a bit hit and miss, it's a bit hit and miss. Hit the ramp, hit the ramp, hit the ramp. Oh, easy, easy, easy. Oh, I don't know how you do the spinny thing on. Move, dude, move out the way. Bye guys, bye guys, bye guys, bye guys, bye guys. Right, this looks like it has got my name on. Come on, you're going to get shot to death, come on. You've got one chance at this, James. You've got one chance. Go on, go on, go on, go on. I don't know how you tilt up. How do you tilt up in a like a, what do you call it? Oh god, oh that's gone terrible. It's all over. Oh god. Only I could do that. Oh god, no, I don't think you don't. No. This is why I'm not a gaming YouTuber, really, innit? I mean, I'm no Ali A, am I? Well, actually, some of your comments suggest I am Ali A, but we won't go there. Now, alongside the 3 titles that I just showcased to you there, this system is of course capable of running all the usual suspects without even flinching, whether it be CSGO, World of Warcraft, League of Legends, at that 4K up to 100 frames per second, right through to Just Cause 3 and Overwatch, absolutely no problem. And you're also going to get some decent productivity figures out of it, of course depending on whether you select the i5, i7 or i9 CPU. But I will link all the parts mentioned in today's video for different regions and retailers in the description below. With that being said, that just about wraps it up. If you liked today's video, give it a big old like rating. If you want to subscribe to see more from me, please do, and ding dong that notification bell. As always though, we'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video.